Every time I've felt like really uncomfortable with an idea, it turns out to be a really good idea.
Will Allred, co-founder at Lavender.
When you think about like being a startup, all you are trying to do is shout from the rooftop, like, we are something you should pay attention to. We are doing things differently. We are a better solution for X. We've figured out how to crack the code. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to make noise. How you structure SDRs within the org is really the important thing here. Not every account should be treated the same. So you got like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4.
What you think ideal metrics should be for an SDR and what that right talent profile is for a startup who'd be looking to hire their first SDR?
What I've seen is there's two profiles of sellers.
Will, welcome to Founders and Empanadas, my man. So happy to have you on.
It's good to be here. Got my empanada. I'm ready to roll.
Cheers. Salud.
Cheers.
How is it?
Good. It's like a bacon cheese thing.
Awesome. Well, I'm a big fan of Lavender. I will admit I spent like 10 minutes trying to get on your leaderboard on the little video game on your website before this call. The thing is subtly addicting, but super excited to have you on board today. And this session will be a masterclass in email marketing, and no one better to have on the pod than you. And just to kick things off, I'd love to learn a little bit more about the origin story of Lavender, how you connected with your co-founders, and what's the origin behind the name too?
Well, I think it's interesting, like, most people know us as Lavender. We did not start as Lavender. So I met my co-founder, also named Will, at a hackathon in Atlanta back in 2018, Techstars Startup Weekend. He got on stage and he pitched this idea for a marketing segmentation platform that like took the underpinning psychology of who you're talking to, the personality traits of that individual, and like create like digital experiences designed around that. We did that for 2 years. Had pretty good success, not like great success, like good success. Where like we were like trudging forward, continuously making progress. And we had groups like Yamaha, Gravity Blankets, who were on platform. They weren't like thrilled on platform, but they're on platform. We had a bunch of co-working spaces. So COVID rolls around 2020. As you can imagine, COVID 2020 co-working spaces, those things don't like pair up well. So we all of a sudden started to get a bunch of phone calls from all those customers being like, hey, we can't pay you. And we're like, oh, they're like, but I still want the product. Can I have it for free? And we're like, no. Yeah, it's like, I don't know if this is gonna work. So like we're sitting there, we have like 45 days of runway, and we had been playing around with this idea that like more and more like communications going digital. And my co-founder, we're sitting in like the NYU entrepreneurship lab up in NYC, and my co-founder Will, he pulls up the TechCrunch article where LinkedIn announces they're shutting down Sales Navigator support for Gmail, which used to be a company called Reportive that would show you information on who you're emailing. And we were like, yeah, he immediately looked at it, he goes, we should just go build that and like use that to cash flow us to stay alive. My immediate response is like, well, we've been building these content analysis tools. Could we like throw that on the backside so like you have information on who you email and like feedback on whether or not it's like good email, how you come across. Yeah, this paired really well for like moving into more and more digital interactions. And so like Casey, our CTO, like spun up like a early prototype, an early version, and we started to like show it to folks. I remember our first user like opened it up and he like squealed with excitement. He was like thrilled about this. He was like, "This is so much cooler than what you guys have been doing." And we're like, "Huh. Well, nobody's ever squealed about our old products, so like maybe we should go do this." Um, like one of the earliest users that we brought on, an investor, his name's Court Corsi. We actually brought him on not to invest. We brought him in to get feedback. He's done a bunch of like consumer tech investments, and he like looked at it and he goes, "Okay, I get it. Like, you guys need to go all in on this. Like, I'll give you some cash to like fund you through the summer. Go raise a bigger round. Like, this is the play." Um, and so we leaned in from that moment on. Now, how? And so you had a product at that point where you had information on who you're reaching out to, and like, feedback on like whether or not it was a good email or not. Obviously, that's evolved into an email coach and now an agentic prospecting tool. Um, but like the um, the name, because you asked about that, it was originally a domain that we bought to spin up an e-commerce store. We're gonna like sell like candles or something. So our marketing platform, we were looking at like getting customers, and like obviously like this chicken and the egg problem of like get customers, get case studies, like back and forth. And we were like shooting ideas back and forth all day of like, why don't we just do drop shipping and like take out a use all of the things that we want to do and like just do it on ourselves. The And so like we batted around this idea like all day. Got back. I was staying with him at his like tiny little New York apartment. I'm crashing on his couch. I go to take a shower. His roommate had a Vino lavender body wash in the shower. And I remember looking at that and shouting from the shower, being like, "Well, see if this domain's available. Check out lavender.com." And he responded back as, that one's $2 million, but the like try lavender.com is $8. We just like grabbed it, not really thinking of it. And this like moment happened like months later where we had to pivot, build this new product. Like, what do we call it? I'm like, oh, we have that lavender domain. Let's just call it that. That's friendly.
All the best ideas start in the shower. I
Or
love it.
shower thought.
I've had a few of my maybe not starting in the shower, but impromptu. Got to buy those domain ones. I like went really deep into plumbing and trying to consolidate the plumbing industry. So like bought up like 100 plumbing domains. I'm still have on my GoDaddy account. Awesome. Well, I also what I really appreciate about your company is how well you do B2B marketing. It's such a space that is hard to stand out in, and just between your Lavender Land show, and you can really just feel your company culture and weirdness and quirkiness emit through the content you put out there.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the game on the side too. Like, there's like fun things we try to do for sure.
I love that, and something that's I've been pretty, top of mind for me as I've scaled my company is how do I keep the weirdness and uniqueness of New York alive as we scale and bring in new leaders and more senior hires that are used to a more corporate setup. So, are there any like, rituals internally or systems that help keep things ridiculous even as your team scales?
It's a good question because, like, I think there's a couple things that have happened in our journey that, like, probably helpful context and like feedback on that. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, what elements are you trying to keep? Like, what is the brand that you're trying to build forward?
Yeah, from New York's perspective, we're trying to be the anti BPO. It's so easy to be for these larger outsourcing companies to be only cared about metrics and performance. And while that's important for us too, we also like to keep the startup energy alive and that all of our teammates kind of bring their own unique values and best idea wins, no matter who it's coming from, instead of just kind of the leadership hires that we made from other BPOs, having to mold them into our way of doing things.
Ultimately, like, you can paint whatever picture you want, but from a product standpoint, how does that come to life?
Yeah, it's ultimately like within our product, really putting the faces out there of our teammates, and it's not just kind of interfacing with the account manager and you have the team behind the scenes completing the workflows. It's kind of bringing the personality and having our teammates that are the front lines giving the product feedback to the product teams of the clients we work with, and us being the voices of the customers and really giving them that visibility. So I guess to answer your question more than anything, it's kind of people putting people first and not hiding behind numbers.
Yeah, so that's like the big thing that I was hearing as you were talking about that. And I'm like, yeah, thinking back to like core pillars of like how we've done things. It's one, be different. And like it's a core value in our company is zig when others zag. And then the other one being like be helpful and like the like informative data backed like piece of like what we do really falls under that. But there's other pieces and like be helpful that align back to that concept. In your case, right, we're talking about like the people, the personalities, this approachability is really like what you want people to feel on the other side. Is that fair? Where for like when you think about like scaling that and you think about like social media strategy, when you think about content strategy, like social media strategy, paid media, like it's all comes back to content, right? So you have to build like base layers of content, and like then you're just talking about distributing the content in different ways. The content that you're talking about is like about the people who work at the company. It's having them sit down on an interview with you and eating empanadas and talking about themselves, right? It's them doing account page takeovers on a week by week basis and like talking about themselves and like who you get to work with, who you get to know. The reason like the podcast format has become so popular is particularly with like politicians, for example, it's because that like longer form of hanging out and getting to understand your thinking all of a sudden makes you more approachable and more understandable and like the other person on the other side becomes more empathetic versus like some soundbite. The like so like when I think about like that as the core differentiator, like what does everyone in your space do that like you don't do is like, blue web page, we're trustworthy, we vet our people, this, that, and the other. And like you can just like flip that on its head and be like, you can vet them for yourselves. Right. Here's the people. You can get to know them, you can understand them. We'll bring that to the forefront.
Very well said. Actually, just the other month, when I was stateside, I saw in the farmer's market this lemon product, and they had a QR code, and like you could scan the QR code of this lemon and like show the whole story of the farmers and how it was created and the stories behind the farmers, which I thought was really cool. And yeah, it's well said, Will. I've got some ideas on how to get my people more front and center within the content we do.
Yeah. The hard part about that is like when you have people on the team that don't want to do that. Like how do you like combat that? I don't have an answer for you. I haven't figured that one out. The reality is like probably some people will, some people won't. Um, but like if they don't want to do it, it's not going to be a sustainable practice anyways. So kind of a hard thing to sell if they're like not enthused.
Totally. It has to be an opt-in, not a forced empanada being shoved down their throat.
But if it starts at the top, right? It's like AI strategies across companies, right? I talk to so many leaders who are just like trying to find ways to outsource this. I'm like, if you don't live it and breathe it, like, why am I gonna like pick it up and do the work for you? Um, like, it's a perfect example. So it's like you getting on this podcast and like running it this way, right? It just like emulates into the entire company culture. Like that is how we do things.
Very well said. And well, I'd love to hear if there were any moments when keeping things fun or like specifically through your Lavender Land show unlocked a surprising business result.
Yeah, I could point to a lot of like interesting, quirky things that we've done. Um, I mean, the big one that's like probably most obvious is we went to SaaStr and we rented an airplane hangar and like threw a massive rave. Like that to me is probably the like pinnacle of like us doing something that was just like off the wall. Um, the team leaned in so hard, put in so much awesome work to like make that happen. So appreciative of that. But the reality is like literally the next week I popped into Dreamforce after that SaaStr and I'm, bobbing around a few different events, and like the brand awareness that created, and like the ability to just like spin up conversations like, oh, Lavender, right? Like you can't buy that with billboards. Like that's like a lived experience where like I still meet people today where like, oh, I went to your thing at like this event. It was so cool. Like such a fun time. Loved hanging out with you guys. Like everyone team's so nice. Like that kind of thing. Like, yeah, you can't do that as a paid strategy.
That's a great story. And how do you decide internally when you've gone like too far or too weird or too off brands?
I actually talked to my exec coach about this. So anytime that my co-founder Will is usually the one that's pushing that envelope of like weird. And I'm usually the one who's like, I would like to see a like white paper that we release that's like very rigid. Yeah, like very different styles. Um, every time I've felt like really uncomfortable with an idea, it turns out to be a really good idea. Um, so like I've sat down with my exec coach about this, talked about it. He's like, correlation? Like, obviously trust your gut, but at the same time, like, it seems to be that your gut is failing you, and like lean into that as like a good signal, not a bad signal. And that is like actually held fairly true ever since I did that.
Often with my teammates in the Philippines, if you kind of let them go crazy, it goes really crazy really quickly. But to your point, same point too.
I mean, obviously, like too crazy, but like what is too crazy when you think about like being a startup? Like all you were trying to do is shout from the rooftop, like, we are something you should pay attention to. We are doing things differently. We are a better solution for X. We've figured out how to crack the code. Now, yeah, I think like Gong is like the perfect case study of like how to do this well, where like you eventually graduate into being a grown up brand and you do things a certain way because like yeah, three-letter companies show up on your website and they're like, why is there a picture of a dog on the website? And you're like, because we're fun. They're like, I don't need fun. I need like six, sigma, blah blah blah. And you're like, "Ugh, it's not fun anymore. Um, but like the early days, like you don't need to impress the Coca-Colas of the world. You need to like get traction and get moving. Um, and one of the easiest ways to do that is to make noise.
I've also found that kind of letting the weird out is so incredibly helpful from a recruitment standpoint too. Where you've got people that like they see a piece of content on social media, oh, like a recent weird karaoke party event or whatever, and they just there's definitely a correlation to candidate quality tied to craziness I found.
Yeah, and like I think some folks are into it. Some folks are a little jaded by it. Post like the 2021 like bubble of SaaS, where like they're like, yeah, you talk a big game, but like at the same time, like when the rubber meets the road, like what is this place like to work at? Yeah, it's easy to judge a culture when things are going well. It's um actually it's pretty hard to judge a culture when things are going well because you don't actually know how people are going to respond when things are hard. Um like the people that I'm working with right now, like it's just incredible. Like we're all on the same page, all in sync. Um and like it's been really fun to like work with the team that I have right now. Yeah, great people. The but like being yourself online, right? Like outside of like the only thing that I would say is like not helpful, and this is my perspective, like other people have other perspectives, like I don't need to be political on the internet. Like that's not going to help anyone make any more money. Right? Like me having an opinion about like the economic theory behind XYZ decision, me just going on like a Twitter tirade or like launching in on like XYZ policy change, like all I'm doing is like dividing people's opinions about me, and like that's not helping actually get the company message across, and it's a distraction. The flip side of that though is like, talking about how we work, how we think about things philosophically, how we think about the problem. and like just being ourselves as we do it, right? Like how I'm doing right here. It's like, yeah, you ask me a question about like how I think through a problem. I'm like, okay, well, what's your differentiator? Like, I'm not important. Like, you're the one who wants to build a brand and scale it. Like, tell me about it, right? Like, that's how we operate, and you can see that in everything that we do. Um, so we try to like stay away from things that don't feel authentic to us. But at the same time, it's slippery slope because LinkedIn loves its engagement in certain ways. So it's like it's easy to fall in and out of favor with the algorithm.
Falling into the algorithm gods that guide us all. Are there are there been any points where you feel like you have to surmount a mountain of cringe? That's the experience I felt at times with putting out content on LinkedIn. It's like, I think this will perform well, but it's like, am I really comfortable with putting that out there? Have you had that personal journey?
July of 2020, I had an intern who sent me a someone's like post on LinkedIn being like, look at these stats he's posting about posting on LinkedIn. You should do this. Um, and I remember responding by being like, absolutely not. That sounds awful. Like, what am I gonna even write about? It sounds like, you know, boring, awful, cringy, like, yeah. And in the background, all it is like you're just sitting there and you're like, what do other people think? Right. And like there's definitely a piece of that that like played a role once I started doing it because there's people that I've known for years who are like, she may just be like, you okay? Like, what is this content? And it's like, you just kind of have to like put the blinders on. You're like, do you see this like traffic spike? Like, nothing else matters. Um, yeah, what you think of this doesn't matter when it relates to people coming, downloading the product, and like learning about it. And so like, got to keep doing it.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to transfer into talking about email marketing. And just to kick things off, I've found that a lot of people are talking about how outbound SDR is going to die with AI, and there's all these AI startups that talking about reinventing outbound, but they're actually going to kill it. What's your take on just industry trends and specifically email as a platform in the age of AI?
So I think you have a couple things happening all at once. One, you've got brands over promising this like world where like people don't do this job. That's like on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, you have like the truth that is there is an economic incentive to try to replace this work with AI as much as humanly possible. It's like every freaking role, right? Like SDRs are not alone in this role. They just happen to be on the front lines in what people consider to be entry level. The reality is the work itself shouldn't be entry level, but here we are. So yeah, if you just click send on a template every day, you are an entry level employee and like that should be replaced. But like if you're actually trying to be the front lines of the organization, start up like net new conversations with critical people that you want to talk to, that's really freaking important. And so the concept that like um it's this like replaceable concept is it's tough, right? You have this like back and forth of like, is this role truly getting replaced? Is it not? Um, my viewpoint on this is it's in flux, but like what we're building with our new agentic prospecting, what I'm seeing is the quality of output tends to be higher than what I'm seeing from an individual rep. Um, Tends to be, and that there's obviously exceptional sales reps that would outperform like an agent, so be it, right? But like on the whole, when you look across the industry, there's a lot of people that are just asking to be replaced. They're not doing the work, they're not being thoughtful about their work. And yeah, a lot of that comes back to how they're measured, right? Which is, things like how many calls did you make today? How many emails did you send today? Um, versus like, hey, how many like truly good meetings did you set? today? Like, how many like good conversations did you have that could set up meetings later next week, right? Those are much more important metrics that like I see a lot of teams just like get caught in the wheel of, I call it like the efficiency trap, right? Where it's like we were working with a team, they had activity quotas. Not against activity quotas. I'm against what activity quotas tend to do. So it's how we reinforce the activity quota, right? So they had a activity quota of 35 personalized emails per day. They also had a quota of 75 phone calls per day. I'm like, okay, so I'm that sales rep. You've given me no tools to dial faster. You've given me no tools to email faster. And so like, I'm going to try to get through these activities, but then I'm also going to be thinking about these other quota numbers that I have, like number of opportunities that I create. And so I'm going to lean into the channels that are working for me. And so if I'm a bad writer, if I'm a bad emailer, I'm going to just like kind of half-ass these like really important like pieces of the puzzle that like glue together the entire sequence or cadence that I'm like performing. And so like the number of 35 personalized emails a day becomes performative, right? Because the reality is we know that takes each of those 35 you know theory should take like 5 minutes, 5.5 is like we've got a few billion sales emails that we've tracked, like so I kind of know. Takes like 5 minutes, like 27 seconds. But the like you start to like pair that out across a day, like let's just go with 5 minutes, right? All of a sudden now you're looking at 12 emails per hour. That's a couple of hours to get like those emails out the door. It's not your favorite channel. So now you're like, it's like, let me just like put something in that's like kind of personalized, or like let me just delete the personalization token altogether and just hit send. So like get this thing done so I can back to dial, right? And so like there's like things that like we set up as an organization that make us struggle. Um that like you don't have to struggle with these things. Which like but I also get like managers are overwhelmed with like trying to train and enable. So much training and enablement's become like tech tool focused. Like, hey, let me make sure you know how to like use this, set up in this, do this. When in reality, like you almost need managers to go back to focusing on like, here are the problems. Like, why are we starting a conversation with these folks? Instead, they're like stuck like teaching you how to be like a system admin. Um, so in a lot of ways, when you look at these like problems, it makes a lot of sense as to why you would like want to use agents for these workflows. Now, a lot of the ones that are in market are not replacements for people at all. At all. Like they are like marketing workflows that are designed to pretend to be a person. It's like X happens, here's a prompt, I see the output. That is a terrible product design. I hate it. Full stop. Like it makes me mad because A, it puts a ton of pressure on your CS org because no one knows how to prompt yet. But two, the outputs aren't going to be good because like let's say our podcast comes out and somebody wants to use the fact that I'm on a podcast as context to reach out to either you or I, right? That's one data point in a sea of data points about like you, I, our business, what we're doing, right? That like doesn't work. People are just falling into the same 2021 trap of like, oh, I got to buy AI now. And so they like buy the first thing they see and they don't actually like approach the problems that these things are trying to solve from like first principles, like thought of like, what actually does this do? Does that create outputs that I would be thrilled to get? I literally talked to a sales leader who was like, yeah, emails aren't that good, but like, I don't know, it's going to run on these closed lost opportunities. I'm like, fine with it. I'm like, you're fine with it? These are people who are like really ideal for you to be reaching out to. You're fine. Well, whatever. I'll just run this in the background. It's creating some ops. It's good enough. I'm like, just do better. Doesn't have to be like, everything needs to be like this, like 100% all in, but like there's better tools in market that could just do this better. Um, or like if you just did like proper list segmentation, you'd probably save yourself $60,000 on this like new thing that you're looking to bring in. Um, but like people aren't actually like thinking through the problem. They're just like, oh, let me just throw a tech tool at it. So um, I think a lot of this space is, you can tell it's like gets me riled up, but I'm like, a lot of this space is just like not good like thinking from the people in charge. I had a call today with somebody who was like, yeah, we're looking at these tools. The main reason why is because we're not aligned with our marketing team, and they keep telling me that they're at 84% of their MQL number, even though we're above our sales like quota. I'm like, then who cares? Like, marketing's measuring the wrong thing, and like you're trying to like solve this problem when it could be solved with a Salesforce report. And instead, you're like trying to like buy 3 more tools to go make sure that the reporting matches. Like, just change what you measure then. Like, you're just doing this wrong. Um, so but like big companies, it's just tough.
It's more of kind of navigating the politics rather than actually driving the results of what matters.
It's like problems get like stuck in this like level in the org. I'm like, there's a reason, right? Because it can't all go to the top to be a big meme. But it's like they get stuck in this like level in the org where they can't see the bigger picture. Right? It's like, hold on. So sales is booking the meeting with the account, but you don't get credit because like the other person was the MQL, not that person. And like you're upset. Like, we got the person. Like, we got the account. Like, a better persona too. So like, why are we even talking about like the report for this? Like, it's irrelevant that I worked your MQL. I got the account. Uh, it's fucking like dumb to me.
Well, you had an interesting take earlier that I agree with, that SDR really can't and shouldn't be looked at as just an entry level role. Um, I'd love to hear from you kind of what you think ideal metrics should be for an SDR and what that right talent profile is for a startup who'd be looking to hire their first SDR.
Whatever I answered might be wrong for whoever's listening and their situation. But what I've seen is there's 2 profiles of sellers, particularly in the world of AI, that seem to be doing really well. People who can yap, and then people who have like deep domain expertise, where it's like they're able to just like be personable, chat with whoever, and like people are just like excited to engage with them. They've got like that aura about them. They can engage with people. Like, that is like a forever sales skill, right? That like if you watch somebody cold call, um, yeah, they can get just anybody on the phone to be like warm, engaged, chit chatting, and like, yeah, they get told to like, you know, F off, and they just respond with, yeah, anyways, like, okay, like, appreciate it. And then they just move on to the next person. They like laugh it off and keep going, right? Like, that is a, huge skill. Um, that like I think is really hard to cultivate. It just comes from making a shit ton of dials. Um, then there's the other side of it, which is like people who really have like deep domain expertise in their space, right? Like I, for example, am a terrible cold caller, but if I got you on the phone and we started talking, uh, I could probably break down pieces of your business and like understand where it can apply into cold email, and like we could have a good conversation. And so there's like those 2 skill sets of like, yeah, person who could talk to a brick wall, and then person who can have like really thoughtful, deep conversation, but may not connect with everybody. When they do, it's going to be really deep and really rich. So like there's like those 2 sides of like the coin.
I'm also curious just about metrics of success for SDR and not just looking at activity output. What have you found for SDR teams to be the right things to measure?
How you structure SDRs within the org is really the important thing here. So like, not every account should be treated the same. So you got like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Typically how that's been done historically is like AEs just look at their territory and they're like, all right, that's really important because it's a big logo. Teams are getting much smarter now using tools like Clay, going in, Key Play being another one, or Ocean's another example. Like these concepts of like, hey, this looks like a good fit, tier them higher, right? Average higher like contract size, like tier them higher. Better first party data signals, tier them higher. Better third party data signals, tier them higher, right? And like the higher the tier, the more likely it is you want a human in the loop on that process to do the job well. Now, I used to look at this and think to myself, you know, AI's in like the passenger seat and like the humans in the driver's seat. I really think at this point, like AI can like deliver a full draft and like humans really just approving when it comes to email. You can totally get your team there. The problem is like pulling those data signals together and writing an email in a way that makes sense, right? Everybody has access to all the same data now. And so you've run into this like Rick Rubin style thing of like, do you have the taste to have an opinion about the email to know that it's like the right thing to go send to this person in this context? The uh, lower the tier you go, the more you can automate, the more you can like delegate out to the AI. Um, and like on that note, like when you start to get into like certain workflows, sometimes that like input prompt output thing can make sense. Um, Sometimes in those workflows, you want a deeper research like style agent that can like do the task in a smarter way. So like it's not one thing or the other. So I think like looking at the measurement, looking at the results, you have to look at a few key different things. One being like, what is the workflow that we're measuring? What is the tier that we're measuring? And so there needs to be like a level of segmentation. But ultimately, the important things are like inputs, conversion rates, outputs, and then how well those outputs are converting and performing on the other side. Um, so it's like, yes, I made 100 dials. How many of those connected, right? Um, okay, we got the connection. How many of those converted to a meeting? Um, yeah, yes, I'm sending emails, 50 a day. Um, how many of those got a positive response? How many of those got a negative response? Um, you know, what was the persona behind that? What was there some other context behind that reply? So like those are I think are like key metrics to like be mindful of is like the conversion points across this funnel. Everything's like you know, a funnel that you're really putting somebody in and you're looking at like key engagement points across the way that you can see what the conversion rate is, right? How many people enter the funnel at this stage? How many convert through every time through, right? And so then you can look at the backside of the funnel. Um, what percentage of people that you engage with on the phone no show your call, right? What percentage of the people that you got over email moved into being a quality opportunity down the line, right? How long did that take? How long are those deal cycles when it's cold outbound versus off of an inbound lead source, right? Because the inbound lead source might like produce smaller opportunities, but they might convert way faster because they're like way further down the funnel. And so as an organization, you might want to try to find that point of diminishing return on those like brand investments, on those inbound investments, so you can get as many of those as possible through the door. Right? Like really comes down to like bigger strategy, but then like going down into like where they come from, where they go, how they perform.
That's an interesting point about SDRs having that taste to be able to supervise the copy written by AI. And I'm curious, do you have any actionable tips on how to test or validate, especially copy with humor in it before sending it to large lists?
Humor is a tricky one. I personally tend to avoid like a tinge of humor in my emails, but it's mostly because like I don't trust AI to do it well. Um, it'll either be corny or maybe just like weird. Risk of like it going off the rails, for example, it's just higher than I would prefer. The other piece is like what's funny to me is not necessarily funny to you. So like, yeah, I might love my dad jokes. You might think they're dumb, and like you're like out of the blue context. You're like, what is this? Like, that's not funny. Anyways, moving on. Right. Um. So like when I incorporate like humor into my writing, it's typically drier. And it's also typically like post customer acquisition, right? Or like super top of funnel where we're just like being ourselves out in the internet, right? But not necessarily in the sales part of the flow, which I don't know what that means about like who we are as people, but it's like if I'm putting together like documentation on like how to set up your like new Aura agent for Lavender, right? Like the fifth page in, I'm writing this at like 2 a.m. I'm like, like throw a like quick joke in there that's like kind of dry. Um, because if I'm not having fun reading it and writing it, like why would you have fun enjoying like reading it? But at the same time, like we have a relationship at that point, like we've warmed up to the place where like we can have that. Versus if I'm reaching out to you cold as a stranger, I show up in your inbox and I make some offhand joke, like it might not land. Yeah, like some people do it and it works, and they're just funnier than me.
We can be great at everything, but I will say, Will, I am a fan. Plus one to you for your content you're putting out there. Will, I'm curious. Do you have any examples of the subject line that you thought would never work but ended up crushing?
Best subject lines are ones that like you could never repeat, right? Like, um, I sent one the other day where it's just like three names of people on his team, and like I referenced those people throughout the email, but like just like three people on his team. Um, Yeah, like Julie, John, and Sally. I made those names up, but the idea being like you see those and like psychologically, like you're like, I know those names. What is this, right? Um, so you have to look. The That one, that's where I feel like I'm borderline manipulative, but I put them in the email, so like it actually makes sense. It's not like me just like using names, just to like mess with you. The ones that I'm always surprised work are, like, almost cliffhangers where, like, you're kinda curious as to, like, what's in the email, but it feels like you're like, "I know this is gonna be a sales email, right? It's gotta be." But you're like, what is that?" And, like, sometimes it just hits at the right time and you're, like, guards down and you, like, read through it and you're like, "Shit, they got me to read a sales email." But, like, the ones that I typically promote are just, like, boring, short, simple, because at least what I've seen is like the shorter they are, the less space they take up. The less space they take up, the more space the preview text can take up. And that's really what you want their eyes drawn to. It's smaller text on like a phone screen or like wherever they are, but it's really what they're looking at and like trying to look through, right? It's like when you pull up like your iMessages, like you're not looking at like you look at like two really quickly, be like, oh cool, like who's it from? But you're looking at like the what's inside the thread, like what's in that message. I think about the same way.
And the last question I have for you is, what's one strongly held belief that you have that you would say 99% of other founders would disagree with? Give me your best hot take.
I've certainly found this to be true, because I feel like we went through this process and I view it as like a mistake on our part. But the like concept of delegating is a really popular one, right? Where it's like, oh, like you don't need to be spending your time doing that thing. You need to delegate that out. I think that popularity and belief is detrimental to founders if they don't understand what they're delegating. And so, like, I try to sit with the work as long as it's like possible. I try to be like painfully involved. Like not in the sense of like I'm not like trying to micromanage. It's like that's not the goal. The goal is to understand what needs to happen in order for this to be successful. I was literally writing down notes on like a workflow I wanted to automate. And like the automation, I don't actually want to build the automation. I'm going to pass it off to somebody else. But like if I don't understand it, how can I pass it off to somebody else to go execute it and expect the results to be good, or be able to help those people when the results are bad? And so, like, if I'm not breaking it down and being like, okay, here's like the core questions that happen at this stage. Does that fit into a workflow? How do I do that? And then, like, at least showcasing that work as it's getting delegated, like, it's hard to do. Like, I think the perfect example of this is like trying to hire a sales leader. In that we've gone down this path before, had like a few opportunities to do it. And I'm so glad like I'm like running the sales org right now, because we're in this moment of complete transition of like how we sell, where we are moving into selling these agents. It is a completely new process. I'm grateful for like advisors that we brought in who've given like some phenomenal like feedback on how to build a process for sure. But like the playbooks that we used to run, like threw them out, like started from scratch. We're like, in order to get a deal done, what questions do you have to answer? Right. And like truly broke it down, running processes ourselves, like getting into the work. I'm not like I'm running a sales process. I'm not like taking the commission check. I'm like I hand that off to the AE. But like the getting to know the process is so valuable, because like how am I supposed to bring in the sales leader if I don't know how to run the sale, right? Or how am I supposed to yeah bring in an engineering leader if I don't know what we need to engineer, right? Like it's the same mindset, but I think we get so wrapped up in delegation and like oh, like free up my time to do this or free up my time for that, like the things I love. It's like you get to do the good stuff after you've like done the hard stuff. And yeah, not every founder's truly on board decking to do that. But like that's very much my mentality. It's like I can't ask somebody to do something that I haven't done myself.
And also just retaining that understanding if that person leaves the company or moves to a different role and not having that gap. Well, where can people find you online?
LinkedIn's a great place. I've been spending to my own detriment more and more time on Twitter. But like email is always fun too. It's just first name, last name at lavender.ai.
Amazing. Well, Will, thank you so much for coming on today. Congrats on the launch of Aura, and excited to play around with that tool and keep doing your thing, man. Big fan of you and Lavender.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate it. And appreciate the empanadas. This is fun.
Cheers.
Cheers.